grasping the bird's tail, or lazily tying the coat, or Peng Lu or boing, roll, cram, push, that sort of thing. These are taught, the choreography is taught, and sometimes it's taught with an idea of martial application. So people think, well, this is a movement, this is a martial art, so what is the application of this movement in a fight? And the movement of the solo forms is not designed for a fight. It's designed for the solo form. So what is the martial application of the form? It's the form. You can think of these as martial techniques. So if the opponent does this, I do that. And if that happens, then I do that. And if that happens, I do this. And if that happens, I do that. And you have an increasingly complex set of movements. The problem, of course, is that the more complex a movement is, the less likely it is to actually happen. So martial arts are about variables and understanding changing reference frames. Something that exists in this moment is not going to exist in the next. No plan survives contact with the enemy. So as soon as you think you are going to do something, something changes, and that is no longer the appropriate thing to do. So what is the point of learning a long series of movements that will probably never actually happen in a fight? Well, for one thing, they're great for demonstration. If somebody says, what's the martial application of this move? You can spend hours going over the martial applications of that movement. And you could say, oh, if I'm holding the ball and then I step and I do this. Well, the person punches, you intercept, you catch, and then it's a throw. You pivot around this side, or you do this, or you do that. But very rarely is a form taught in a way where the movements that you are learning are actually relevant in a real scenario. The movements are not the important thing. What is important is the concepts that the movements are teaching you. So when you are practicing Tai Chi as a martial art, in the beginning, it's sometimes good to understand, okay, this could be engaging somebody. So you make up a martial story, a story about technique, and then you can demonstrate the story with a cooperative training partner. So you say, they punch me and I do this and engage and step and throw. Or I bounce them away and then I roll and I lock their arm and then I press and then I lead them down and then I bounce them away. That's a good story. And it could happen. So whenever I'm demonstrating martial applications of movements, I usually always say, it could happen. But what we are learning when we practice a form is internal principles. And these are principles that can be applied in a moment. So in the instant. If you have a series of movements or a pattern that you rehearse, and then you apply it in a fight, if it remains applicable for more than a fifth of a second, either you are doing really well or your opponent is very cooperative. So even simple things like a punch. You can practice jab, jab, cross, and jab, jab, hook, hook, uppercut, back fist, pin, hammer. You can do all this stuff, and you can practice it all you want. But is that going to work against somebody who doesn't want you to do it? What if they do this? Then your technique doesn't work anymore. So they might duck, they might do all kinds of stuff. So the idea of learning these things is learning about how to engage momentum in different ways. And that is where we come to the it's called the 4 directions. Grasping the bird's tail, lazily tying the coat. These first 4 basic ideas are part of what's called the 13 postures. And I've talked about this in another video. There's what we call the 4 directions, which are represented by these. And then we have the 4 corners, which are sometimes called pluck or draw out, or pull down sometimes. There's rending, yeah, and then there's elbow, and cow, or against, or shoulder strike, or leaning, or abutting. You can actually abut with your butt if you want. So there are these 8 basic shapes, basic ways of engaging with momentum. The first 4, boing, roll, cram, and push, have to do with linear momentum. And the 4 corners, or the 4 diagonals, have to do with angular momentum. So what we have done in section 3 is the movements that teach us about linear momentum. And the way, okay, linear momentum is momentum that goes in a straight line. Angular momentum is rotating things, things spinning around other things. So when we're dealing with linear momentum, momentum is equal to mass times velocity, and we're dealing with straight lines. Boing, roll, boing, cram, and push are 3 directions of linear momentum. Horizontal, going a little bit away from the Earth and a little bit toward the Earth, or a lot toward the Earth, or a lot away from the Earth, depending on the situation. So boing is bouncing something up and away. Cramming is going straight forward, horizontal, and pressing or pushing is going forward and down. And these are all maintained with Lu, or rolling. So you want to stay on the opponent's center, but they keep moving. So you have to change and adapt in order to maintain the centripetal geodesic, the connection with the ground. So if somebody is pushing me and they are floating on me, that's fine, and I can roll so that they go off to the side, but that allows me to stay on their center. And if they resist a lot, then I just sort of roll through it, like a boat going through the water. I just let the water go off to the side. Rolling is not about moving the person to the side. That's actually one of the 4 corners. So when I am engaging somebody and they push on me, I can roll to make the engagement surface area a lot smaller. Because if I'm engaging like this and there's a lot of surface area, then I'm pushing really hard. But if I roll, then this gets narrower, it gets really small, it gets very fine, so that I have a very small point of contact engaging them, and I maintain that sort of needle going right towards their center. And it doesn't matter how we turn, that needle is always going toward their center. So they push here, and I roll, and I'm still going on their center. I'm not pushing to the side, that sort of thing. So that's boing and roll. So that's upwards. G, cramming, that's linear momentum going straight forward, or, well, straight in a straight line. And an is down a little bit. Okay? It's amazing what a difference a couple of degrees make. Changing from this to this changes everything as far as the way that your opponent is able to engage and how you are able to engage. And changing to this changes it again. It can be quite disorienting when a person is thinking in 2 dimensions and you add a third, and it shakes up their reference frame. They have no way to measure where they are because you keep changing where the ground is relative to the pressure that you're applying. So here's how we practice. We often practice with a partner, with a training partner, but for the last 18 months or so, we have not had any training partners. So we have a ball. We're up against the wall. What's the choice? Have a ball. Balls to the wall. So this is boing. I'm a little bit underneath it. I'm engaging, and the power is going upward into the wall. And if I'm going straight forward, this is cramming. This is going straight forward into the wall. And if I'm here, then I'm going down into the wall. So this is pang, ji, and an. Or I could just go pang, ji, and an. Same thing. Okay, so I'm leading down, I'm going straight forward, I'm going up a little. See what happens to the shape of the body when I'm like this? I don't get skinnier, but Okay, from here I go up, okay, and now I go straight forward. Everything changes inside, and now I go here, and everything changes again. So it's a different internal shape, a different internal quality, a different energy. From thinking about being under the thing and having it float on me, to being a river and washing it downstream, to being a whirlpool and leading everything into the ground. So these are the three vectors of linear momentum. Yeah, that's good enough. So what happens if the wall moves? Well, then I have to change. So now I'll do G. And what if the ball moves again? Then I have to roll and move, and now I'm doing an. So I can push. So pang, roll, cram, roll, an. I roll to pang. I roll to cramming. I roll to pushing down. So I'm under the ball. I'm right at the apogee. I am on top of the ball. So this is an exercise that we do with a training partner. And we can change directions. And then we can change directions in many different ways, because we'll have not just one ball, but two arms to deal with. So this is what we're going to use for the next couple of lessons. The first one, we're just going to do this. Remember that rolling is not about moving the ball to the side. It's about allowing the ball to go to the side. The catch is that the wall is not making those changes for us. It's not like having a training partner who is trying to neutralize our needle and stick their needle in us. So you can think of push hands as being like grappling. You can think of it as being like striking. You can think of it as being like fencing. And this principle will apply to all of them. So if this is a sword, this is the same idea. And we applied this same technique to sword work. If it's punching, then it's the same idea. You're engaging like this. And if it's grappling, it's the same idea. Okay? Similar principle. It's all about preserving that linear momentum, the connection into the other person's center. Some people call it forward pressure. So forward pressure changes when the thing that is in front of you moves, because now forward is in a different direction. So here's a basic exercise. We're going to do this. Just go like this. Roll the hand back and forth. It's nice to have a ball that is leather, or at least not cold plastic. You want to develop that kind of sensitivity. If you're good and you're not worried about the floor or your toes, you can get a ball made of wood. That's nice. And then here. So you can practice just rolling like this. And I want to maintain that very light pressure. So I don't want to push really hard on the ball. I don't want to squash it. And gradually get the pressure lighter and lighter until no matter how the ball moves, I am always going toward the center. Now I can move my wrist around the ball like that. And I can move my elbow around the ball with the arm straight or bent. I can move the shoulder around the ball. Light pressure. Okay, don't squash the ball. That. I can move my head around. Well, it's a little harder with the headset on. That idea. And then the shoulder, the arm, the elbow, the wrist, the fingers, like so. And I can go up and down and sideways, sideways. And if you drop the ball, you have to send me $5. There. So that's for starters. And You want to feel it. Let's try this now. Okay. So we get an uneven surface, and we do the same basic idea. We're just going to practice this. I want to be just underneath the ball and let it roll. And I want to see if I can preserve that position just below the equator or just below apogee on the ball so that I can feel it into my feet. So I feel as though the ball is pushing me into the ground, and I want to just roll and keep that engagement very intense. But so if this were to suddenly start to push me really hard, it would just float on me. But there would only be a tiny, infinitely small point of contact right there. And then I can practice doing this, rolling around like that. And I can use the same hand and change directions. And again, at any point, if suddenly there were to be 3,000 pounds of pressure applied on the ball, it would go right through me into the ground and bounce right and float right off of it. So I want to be the ocean and keep everything lined up. I don't want to get too lazy. That's for later. Yeah, I want to clear one thing up before we end here today, and that is to say that we talk a lot about alignment and the precision of the shape and how the back must be open and this must be open. That's so that you understand the energy. It doesn't mean that you have to have perfect posture to fight. It can be helpful. It can also be a disadvantage to have to be like that. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do. You can still apply the same principles even if you're here. Okay? Or here. I can still do it even though everything is wrong. I can still be right within the wrongness of it. And otherwise, as soon as you lose perfect, you lose the fight. So you want to practice maintaining what is essential even in the imperfect situations. That is going to serve you better than insisting that you have the posture exactly perfect all the time. You want to understand why the form is there, the importance of the form, to overcome all the bad habits that you had, and then to be able to transcend the form. So the shape should not matter very much at all as you progress. I've done push hands with people in wheelchairs. I've done push hands with people who only or standing on one leg. So the posture is not, and I've lost to them. Okay, so the posture is not the be-all and end-all. It is a vehicle. The form is the context within which you learn the art. It is not the art itself. And if your posture cannot do some of the things that are required by the traditional pedagogy, then you might just have to find a new way to do it. Invent your own way of learning these principles. There's a Canadian magician, Muddy. He has no hands, and he does sleight of hand card tricks with no hands. So, and nobody can figure out how he does it because all of the all of the tricks are designed for people with hands. So, as Penn and Teller said, you're cheating by not having hands. So, this can be fun. It can be relaxing. It can be a nice, happy pastime for you. And you can work on not just cylindrical things and flat things, but you can go for a walk through the woods and go around trees and tree branches and go through your house and roll around door frames and all sorts of things. And then you can practice with two balls. And then when we get back to having training partners again, you can practice with a human. And they just stand there as you roll around their torso, go up and down, go over their face, over the back of the head, and so on. And then they just stand there being immobile. Or not, depending on what level of difficulty you want to bring to it. So this is step one of understanding what boing is. Very good. More practice.